No, 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 I swear, Soul Eater is a great anime.
Pumpkins, pumpkin, 'cause that's my magic spell.
Nostalgia is a powerful thing. Sometimes shows and movies can be bleh, or even downright bad, but our rose-tinted glasses of youth lead us to believe, well into adulthood, that certain pieces of media are untouchable. Unfortunately, most shows are better left in our childhood, or if you're like me and didn't watch some of your generation's most popular series, you shouldn't even bother at all now. Chance missed, right? That's the sound of me being wrong. This changed when I rewatched the Dodgeball episode of Recess. I noticed, and this is obnoxious blanket statement number 1, that cartoons have more leniency with humor than live-action series targeted towards a younger demographic. So if the humor is able to age with the viewer, then would not having nostalgia for these series make them any less enjoyable to watch now? My best friend made me watch Steven Universe, then Adventure Time in rapid succession, and seeing as these two series were arguably Cartoon Network's crown jewels of the 2010s, Teen Titans Go too, I'll keep it real, I can safely say, at age 24, that you do not need nostalgia for these series in order to enjoy them in adulthood. I think what bodes in Adventure Time and Steven Universe's favor is that they were released on Cartoon Network, which, for the longest time, pushed envelopes that Disney and Nickelodeon barely skirted.
He made us in his laboratory by accident. Don't worry, Professor. I was an accident too.
I'm not saying it never happened on those channels, but Cartoon Network wasn't afraid to not only be weird, but be weird in a way that had Anglo-Saxon moms clutching their rosaries. Even now, Cartoon Network pushes their jokes a step too far, and it's hilarious. Shows that come out of Cartoon Network have a certain degree of randomness to them, and both Adventure Time and Steven Universe manage to balance this with a seamless overarching plot and intricate themes. I wouldn't say these two series are excessively comparable. Adventure Time has more of that Hot Topic 2012 humor, I'm so sorry but it's true, while Steven Universe is more reminiscent of the cartoons being released today. Both were fun to watch in different ways, but their biggest similarity was their popularity. That and making high schoolers in the 2010s think carrying ukuleles around to classes was okay. Some sins can't be forgiven, Rebecca Sugar. The humor of these two series, however, had overlaps, and it probably had to do with them being on Cartoon Network. Also, I'm pretty sure there was overlap with the people who helped make these series. Rebecca. Sure, there were some fart jokes in Adventure Time I could live without, but the jokes in both of these series played on awkward pauses, and always managed to make the characters feel real and relatable.
I've got gallons and gallons of warm red teenage blood and you can't have it. Huh? Yeah? Yeah.
Lapis, fly us in! No.
Because the humor in these series is fantastic, I think it helps ease older audiences into a sense of childlike wonder, even if it's their first time watching the show. Another reason these two series still slap in adulthood is that their lessons are realistic, sometimes bleak, but always hopeful. As a kid, most cartoons had ham-fisted lessons about not lying and listening to your parents. That's fine, it really is, but at age 24, I kind of know that already. Good thing these cartoons were specifically made for me, a cynical 24-year-old, and no one else. I remember being young and wishing more shows had themes like Avatar: The Last Airbender, themes that respect the children in the audience. Rose Quartz is one of the best characters to come out of animation, and it's because she teaches the audience that sometimes you can have complex emotions towards someone, sometimes someone can try to do good but inevitably do bad, and we can't always wrap a neat bow on how we feel about them. With Adventure Time, Princess Bubblegum is the literal definition of gaslight gatekeep girl boss, and it looks like even the biggest fans of her character can step back and say, yeah, what the fuck, Bubblegum? But I'm sure most fans agree that whatever unethical tendencies this monarch has make her far more interesting than when it looked like she was just going to play the damsel.
Monarchies are not democracies!
What?
Flaws are necessary for having a story with characters who feel tangible, which is where I think a lot of shows fall short when we try to rewatch them in adulthood. And that's fine, not all things are meant to translate well into adulthood, non-ironically, but it just means we need to settle for our nostalgia. Steven Universe and Adventure Time not only present the audience with a metric fuckton of moral questions, but they don't always give a definite answer. Steven is left with knowing he had to constantly deal with his mother's ish, and the gems, while they grew during the series, still made their problems Steven's problems. Pearl never quite copes with the loss of Rose, Steven harbors resentment towards Greg for denying him a regular childhood, and, to a far less dramatic extent, everyone's favorite will they won't they donut shop couple land on won't they. The series doesn't force itself to end super happily. Steven Universe Future is proof of that, with Steven having so much trauma that he needs to remove himself from everything he loves simply because he never found out who he was beyond the fighting. With Adventure Time, a show about best buds being heroes, I was surprised to find that one of the biggest themes was that some things stay, some things change, and we just have to go with it because there is no stopping it. While the entire show rides on this, I think the stakes arc in Season 7 said it best.
Everything repeats over and over again. No one learns anything, because no one lives long enough to see the pattern, I guess.
Also, Everything Stays is one of the best cartoon songs to exist ever. Even in Distant Lands, aka Adventure Time Shippuden, the audience realizes that history repeats itself, sure, but not everything will remain exactly as you want it. There isn't always an answer for everything. Just as much as kids relate to this stuff, adults do too. That or they never gave themselves the space to think about it as kids. Seeing characters go through the same existential shit you go through is actually a pretty neat thing. Another reason Adventure Time and Steven Universe were fun to watch as an adult is that, despite being what I consider the One Pieces of cartoons, that means long enough you contemplate if it's worth turning on the first episode, the overarching plots make it easier to watch. While overarching plots amongst episodic layouts were a prevalent cartoon setup since the 90s, I think Avatar: The Last Airbender ushered this in as the golden standard. I was under the impression that Adventure Time and Steven Universe were primarily episodic, and while both series can be tuned into at any point for laughs, there are larger plots. I think more adults prefer overarching over episodic. I think it's time relevant too. As cable burns and streaming sets up its home on the ashes, only for capitalism to reinvent cable with extra steps, shows can be viewed from any episode at any time. Back in my day, we had to watch whatever was on TV, meaning overarching plots would be harder to follow. Adventure Time starts off episodic, but you can tell the series started to decide what ideas to follow and which characters to explore during the first few seasons. And seeing as the history leading up to the series is over 1,000 years, there's a lot of material to flesh out. The Ice King, for example, starts off as the quote-unquote villain, but quickly becomes more of an ally than anything else once the heroes discover his backstory. The characters settle into their actual roles, and while Finn maintains his heroic nature for the most part, he learns that it gets harder once he starts picking up more perspective.
Baby's building a tower into space to tear off his dad's arm. From like where that round of the arm bone meets that weird flat bone on the top of the back. Gonna pull that until
Yeah, that was unhinged. Unlike Adventure Time, it feels more like Steven Universe already knew where it was going since episode 1, instead of figuring it out as it went along. While some episodes focus on human stuff and some episodes focus on gem stuff, the stakes undeniably are raised, and as the series nears its end, everything starts wrapping up at once. Then the movie and future unwraps certain parts just to add some salt and rewrap it in a sadder, more jaded sense. Yay, I love teen angst. Above all else, Adventure Time and Steven Universe are stories meant to relate to everyone, not just kids. This relatability is seen in the characters, the lessons, the songs, the conclusions, the backgrounds. Life isn't always nice, but nice things can always be found in the world, and that's enough to keep us going. Bittersweet stories can be hit or miss for me, but in this case, the bittersweet nature of these two series made them timeless shows. Ones that, even if you have zero nostalgia for them, doesn't mean it's too late to turn on the TV and enjoy.
Are you trying to kill him faster?